The reading for this evening from Living Wisely, Living Well by Swami Kriyananda is a beautiful one on the spine. Keep your spine ever straight. It is the channel through which energy flows up to the brain. If that upward flow is weakened or impeded, your power to meet life's challenges will diminish. Truthfulness demands an attitude of firmness, integrity, and clear vision. These virtues all depend on the upward flow of energy in the spine. This is a very important topic because everything that we do is to bring us inside into that inner stillness, into that inner power, into the magnetism of God that's within. Our yoga postures that we do are to strengthen us and to bring our energy within and up to the spiritual eye, to center us in the spine. Our energization exercises are for the same purpose, to strengthen us and to bring the energy within, to bathe the whole body in light and prana and energy and magnetism, so that we can meditate by bringing that energy up to the spiritual eye. The reason we chant is to bring the energy into our bodies, bring it into the heart, open the heart's power and magnetism and energy. We can bring that up to the spiritual eye to meditate more deeply. Every part of our path is to be able to draw on that inner power and to bring it up to the spiritual eye, to center ourselves within the spine. The power, the strength of God comes from within. I remember once when I was living in Italy, I was in the tree pose, Rikasana. I was at the temple, and someone came to me. It was Nayaswami Shivani, and she said, Dhyana, you must come immediately. There's a fire in your house. And I came out of the pose and I went over, and lo and behold, there was a fire there. But my reaction to it was a centered reaction because I had come from within. I had come from doing a yoga posture, and of course we were able to do everything we needed to for that fire. But my reaction was one that was centered from within the spine. And all of our life should be centered from within. The goal is inwardness, is stillness, is centeredness within. I recall one time we made a CD, I think it was our first CD at Ananda, Gurgaon. And it didn't turn out so well. We had to redo it. When I asked them how it went and how it sounded, the people who had produced it for us, the man told me, he said, well, the only problem was you were out of tune. Your group was out of tune and you were off beat, both of those. And well, what else is there to a CD if you're out of tune and you're off beat? You don't have a CD. But this has made me think, this is how people live their lives for the most part. They're out of tune and not in harmony with the energy in the spine. And that's why their life doesn't produce success or prosperity. Or we have to live within in the spine. And you can tell a lot from how a person sits, how their posture is, if they're slumped over, if they're uncomfortably standing, if their energy is low, if their eyes are down. All of this is showing that the energy is not moving properly. And so Master was very strong on keeping the spine erect, keeping it straight. You can imagine it's a hose. And if that hose is curled and kinked, the water won't flow properly. So with the spine, we align the spine, which is our astral spine, the energy where the energy is flowing. And then that energy can flow properly. So all of our practices allow for the lengthening of the spine, for the opening of the spine, for the recharging of the spine, the energization of the spine, the magnetization of the spine, so that our energy can flow properly. If the hose is bent, a person's energy will be down, they may be moody, they may be distracted, they may be restless, they may lack concentration. And you can see people at different times that they sit to meditate, and if their spine is not straight, typically they won't be able to sit for a long time. They may be drowsy, they may be sleepy, their mind might be restless. And so the proper position for meditation is to sit upright with the shoulders back, as we did just a moment ago. The chest is up. The energy is moving upward. And as we move energy upward, it's easy to meditate. As the energy is up, it's easy to focus properly. It's easy to have inspiration, to have concentration, insights, solutions come to our problems in everyday life. And we can look at all around us life. As I was walking over here this morning, I was looking at, so beautiful here at Ananda village. I was looking at all the trees, and every tree has a spine, if you think about it, and every tree has energy flowing through that spine. And I was looking at the grass, and all the little blades of grass, they all have a little spine there. All of the flowers and the bushes, they have a trunk, they have a spine, they have energy flowing through upward to create the flower, to create the branches, to create the leaves. I was looking at the hills as I was walking over, and they come to a peak, like the energy is flowing up. And this is all showing us that all around us in nature, the energy is flowing upward in the spine, and all the plants, all the trees, all the flowers. You think of the animals. I was at Kana National Tiger Reserve before I came here to America, and we saw 4 tigers in 3 days. Now that was a miracle. It was just a blessing of Divine Mother. But as we saw those tigers, especially the most beautiful one, it was just breathtaking. How poised, how centered, how just ready to leap up at any moment that tiger was, because it was straight, was completely centered in the spine. And so also, plants, animals also have a spine where the energy is flowing. And for us, if we look at people around us and how their energy is flowing and how their posture is, I remember when I was about to take a yoga teacher training here at Ananda Village, and someone told me, when you take that program, your body will change completely inside and out. Inside, because there's energy flowing. The outside, your back will be straight, your legs will be stretched out, your arms will be, and right, maybe your body will be, maybe you'll be taller, maybe, you'll stretch out, the spine will be stretched out. But if you do yoga postures, and you can look around at people who I know are different teachers there in India, they have beautiful posture because they're centered in themselves from doing the yoga postures. And also I was thinking of how, if you remember, Swamiji always had his spine straight, his chest was up, his shoulders were back. He led with his heart, with the chest, and he was always centered within himself. Master, if you look at some of the videos of Master, or the videos show you much better, but he just was ever, his strength was coming from his spine, and his chest was out and open, and just wonderful posture. And I remember Swamiji told a friend of mine once, we were together, we were having dinner, and at a certain point, he just looked at her and he just said, "Sit up!" And she was sort of slumping over the table, and I think everybody gets in different positions that way one time or another, but he just said, "Sit up!" And he would always want you to just really focus on keeping your spine straight. And he went to one other friend of ours, this was many years back, and he just grabbed him by the shoulders and just pulled his shoulders back and pinched him in the, and right in between, just to show him that this is very important to keep the spine straight. I know sort of a funny story that one of the Raja Yoga students told me a couple of years ago, one of the students in India. He says, well, we were talking about what were the results of your Raja Yoga practice, your meditation, energization. And this fellow said, well, the best thing I can say is now I still watch TV, a lot of TV, but I can sit up and watch television. I thought, well, that's quite something. At least that's a step towards getting away from the television. At least he could sit up at this point. And so keep in mind that all of our positions, Mahamudra, all of the bandhas, the various pranayams that we do, as we did this one earlier. I don't know if all of you were joining, but tensing and exhaling, relaxing. Well, it's not just a breath. Energy is shooting up the spine to the brain. And every time you do that one, you're strengthening the spine. When we did the inhalation, even count breath, inhaling, holding, exhaling, that's a wonderful practice too. If you can keep a strong flow going, a current of energy through the pranayams, through doing the postures, energization, don't miss it. I mean, it's absolutely one of the most important things of the path. I remember Swamiji asked me years back, it was in the 80s, and I was missing energization. I mean, I'd do it maybe, I don't know, twice a week or whatever. Oh, I'm busy, or, basically what people should say is, I'm lazy. I mean, it's not, I'm busy, I'm lazy. So I remember he asked me in passing one time, he says, Dhyana, do you energize? And of course I didn't lie. I said, no, sir, I don't do it very much. He said, you absolutely must. You must do it. You don't know how important it is. And from then on, I said, okay, every day I'm going to do it. First it was an act of discipleship, but then I began to love it. I saw the strength of my body, the clarity of my mind, the focus, the concentration, the energy, the magnetism. You can't really go deep in these practices without energization. So that's something to remember. All the practices we do build the strength and the flow of the energy in the spine. And that flow of energy, keep in mind, it's magnetic. If your energy is flowing properly, well, let's see if it's flowing improperly. Like the man who, this man told Guruji that he said, he couldn't get a job, he lost his wife, and he was ill, and various things. He went on, and Master said, you're jinxed, and I will help to de-jinx you. Now what did he do? He got his energy flowing properly in the spine. He got him in the right asana, you could say, and then the man became successful, he became prosperous, and on and on. So keep that in mind, that physically, we have to keep our energy flowing properly, sit properly, never slump. The yogi should never be slumped down. The shoulders shouldn't be down, shouldn't be kind of sitting like this. Should always be aware of the spine. Now mentally, what's the best asana? Mentally we should be open. This is why aware, expansive, interested. This is why Master would, when he gave his talks, he would come out on the stage and he would ask people, how feels everybody? Because he wanted people to be ready for the teachings, and awake and ready, in fact. And he had them shout back to him, awake and ready. And this should be the yogi's mental asana. I'm awake and ready all the time. And I'm open, I'm receptive. Now we don't want to, I love what Swamiji said, don't be so open that your brains fall out. So it's not like you want to be open to everybody, I'm open to him, but you're open to the truth. You're open to light. You're open to the level of consciousness and awareness that is in tune with God. And so that level of mental openness is very important. It creates a magnetism. You remember the story of Master walking by Swamiji, and Master said, well, how are you, Walter? And Swamiji says, well, and Master said, that's good. He just ever wanted you to be ready, awake, ready, positive, enthusiastic. And the yogi's attitude should always be that way. And as you're mentally that way, opportunities come, people come into your life, inspiration comes, answers, solutions, and inner strength will come to you. There was, that's a wonderful thing. I just want to hit on this before I go on, is that I was reading, when I was thinking about this quote from the Bible, "Seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all these things shall be added unto you." Now, I studied that forever when I was growing up in the Christian church. I never understood it. But I think I understand it. I understand it more and more now. Seek ye first. You could change that word "seek" to go within first into the kingdom of God, meaning meditate first, uplift yourself first, clear the restless mind first, calm yourself first, gain energy and strength first by going within, and then all of these things shall be added unto you, meaning whatever is needed in your life will start to come to you because you're coming from the center within. You have that openness, receptivity, your antenna is up, you could say. You're in attunement on the right station of the divine, and things will come to you. So seek ye first, go first inside. And when we're talking about the right mental asana, it has to come from within. And that brings strength, and that brings solutions, and that brings help from the masters. There was a great story I read in the Path, or maybe Swamiji told the story, of one of the monks who was painting one of the buildings, I believe it was at Mount Washington. And the ladder, he had something heavy in one of his hands, I think it was a can of paint, and the ladder was leaning up against the building, but then as he grabbed that can, the ladder started going away from the building, and he could have fallen many feet. But he was centered in himself, but he also centered in this divine consciousness. He was centered in God. And I think he also chanted Om, and he was able to go back, and the ladder just went in the opposite direction. Now, the foreman on that job couldn't believe all the things that were happening there, but they did happen. And I think because people were centered in themselves, and they were centered in the divine flow of grace and consciousness. And so as we open ourselves and are receptive, we draw the right things, the right situations, the right solutions, the right things come to us. And Yoganandaji showed also how speaking of the mental asana, how your mental strength can be increased. It can increase the strength of the body, is what I want to say. And he would demonstrate, he would put himself up against the wall when he would give different lectures. He would demonstrate this, and hundreds of people would be there. And he would have, at one time he had I think there were 6 big strong policemen came to test his strength. And he just stood there against the wall, and they pushed. And he said, "You can't push harder, you can't push harder, you can't push harder." And they pushed as hard as they could, and then he whack, the energy from his spine just boom, it hit them. He was so mentally strong that strength just came out of his body, and it pushed them all into the orchestra pit. And so if your mind is strong, your body is going to be strong. So as we think of the right mental asana, it has to be coming from within. That inner strength of our mind is going to make our body strong. And that should also include calmness and a centeredness and openness that flows out to people. We were just down in Berkeley doing a satsang there on Ananda, India, and I went with some of the Ananda future leaders here. Wonderful group of people. We had a wonderful time. And so we were heading down on Sunday morning. It was we left here at just about 7 in the morning, as the program was at 10. And so we were just talking and enjoying ourselves. And then Darshana, who was driving, it was Yogesh, Darshana, and Kalamali with me. And Darshana says, "Uh-oh, there's a policeman following us." And we had just gotten going talking, and she was going faster and faster, I guess. And so she had on her dashboard a altar of the masters, and then Master and Swamiji and maybe Babaji, and you know, we were just happy, you know, centered, clear, awake, friendly people, yogis, and so I think we were all praying that we didn't get a ticket. I mean, that would have been hundreds of dollars, not rupees. And so I kept looking over at the pictures while the sheriff, it was a sheriff, he came around, and he came on my side on the window, and, you know, I just looked out and I said, "Yes, officer, can we help you? Is there something wrong?" And he looks at Darshan and he says, "Do you know how fast you were driving?" And and he just went on, and "I could give you a steep ticket," and we just kept smiling and saying we were sorry, but we were just completely happy within ourselves. I mean, we could have tried to argue back, but we didn't know, we just were just as happy as ever. And he says, "Okay, just go." We knew it was just Divine Mother's blue aura around us and around the car, because he could have given us, I mean, it could have been $400 or $500 for speeding. And so in that inner strength, you always want to think, not just "I'm strong in myself," but, you know, you're including the others. Swamiji said, give bliss to people. So as you see people, you know, and as you're dealing with people, just try to give them the inner joy. I love Swamiji's story of when he was at the airport years, decades ago, and he, you know, as we travel internationally doing the work of Master, you tend to have quite a bit of luggage. I know that firsthand. And so he had like tons of luggage, and the man in front of him had way too much luggage as well. He was at the counter checking in to get on the flight, and the person checking him in said, "You just have way too much luggage." And the man, "And you're way overweight." And the man argued with him. He went back and forth. I'll never fly this airline again." And he went on and on. And so he had to pay a hefty fine for being overweight. And so Swamiji was next in line. He had tons of luggage too, and he just kept praying that he didn't have to pay overweight fine. So he comes up, and, "Oh, how are you?" And as they start talking, and the man says, "Oh, what do we have here?" He says, "Oh, okay, come on through." And he had far more than the other man, but he had the inner strength and poise. He just, all around him was a nice aura of friendliness and joy and happiness, and he went on through. And this is how we have to be when we are, I don't mean inner strength and mental strength being something that's brutal. I mean something that's very, it's centered, it's beautiful. It goes out to people. People, they come into that aura. Yesterday I was at Naidruva's, where I'm staying, and there were just so many people coming through there. We were talking about the work in China, so there 4 or 5 people came for that, and other people came for something else, and we were just having such a wonderful time. And that's what energy and magnetism, and that's what it's all about. It draws to you in that aura what you need, who you need, the discussions and various things that need to come up, and they happen. Also, remember that deep inspiration comes from mental strength and clarity. And I'm reading this really great book by one of the most well-known surgeons, neurosurgeons. His name is Dr. Ben Carson. And it's called Healing Hands, if you want to get this book. But it's a remarkable book. But he tells one really great story of when he was growing up. He had, he grew up in a very poor neighborhood, and there were many difficulties in his family. But he got to go off to college, and he studied because his mother was ever putting pressure on him to be a success. And he went from the lowest person in the class as far as grades up to the highest. But one story he told, I just thought was incredible. He said one time, and he was in college, he went to Yale, and he wasn't able, because of lack of focus, to study properly for a really important exam. So every day he said, I'm going to study tomorrow, then I'm going to study tomorrow, then I'll study tomorrow. And then the day came and he hadn't studied at all. I mean, the night before he hadn't studied at all for the exam. So then he was too tired, so he went to bed. And the next morning was the exam. So what he did, I mean, he just said he didn't know what to do. He was a man of prayer. He was a man of God. His mother took them always to church and all. So he did pray quite a lot. So what happened during the night, though, he was dreaming. And it was kind of I think it was a super conscious dream. It had to have been. And he said what happened was he saw kind of a shadowy figure in his dream. And that figure went over to a chalkboard and began to write out different formulas. Now, this was some kind of chemistry or science test, and he wrote out all these formulas. And in his superconscious dream, I would say, was he just looked and, he tried to remember what those were because he knew those had to do with his exam. So in the morning when he woke up, he was just thrilled, and he wrote down as much as he could, and he went to the examination, and those questions with those formulas were on the exam. Now, how do you figure that? He was open, he was mentally awake, he was ready, he was receptive, and God gave him what he needed for that examination. So that's a remarkable story. So physically we've gone over the proper asana postures. Mentally we've gone over. Spiritually, I would just say ever keep open to the space where God's grace can come. Whatever you can do to open that space for God's blessings. One woman told Yoganandaji, one disciple, she said, I don't feel you as much as this other disciple feels you. She says she feels you all the time, and your grace coming. And he said, if you close the door, how can I come in? So if you have I just keep thinking in my mind now to keep creating space for God to come and flow into our lives. And we do it through everything that we do, all of the practices and chanting and the spiritual study and satsang and seva. And as we do that, we begin to feel that river of energy, of life force flowing, inspiration, ideas, all coming from God, flowing into our lives. I'll end with one beautiful story. A woman here at Ananda village told me, one of my good friends. She works at the Crystal Hermitage at the gift shop. And so one day it was, there was no one there. They had just gone through the whole month of the tulip festival here. There were 5,000 people who came from everywhere just to see the beautiful tulips here at the Crystal Hermitage. So she said, everyone was exhausted, and so she just was there in the shrine of the masters for just a moment. That's here at Ananda village, to get something, and she was going to go. And then, just then, someone knocks at the door. And she thought, oh gosh, another person coming. But she said she went there and she opened the door. It was a couple from nearby, and they came in and they were looking around and said, well, we'd like a tour. And she said she would just got to be more and more open, more and more willing, because she knew it was the right thing to do and there was nobody else around. And so then she started talking with them, and she said, well, where are you from? Where are you? And they said, oh, we're from here. And they said they were from Santa Barbara, which is where she was from. She said, really, you're from Santa Barbara? And, well, what high school did you go to? And turns out that they had gone to the same high school. And then my friend said she just looked at the other person, she just looked in her eyes, and she said, Becky, is that you? And the other girl said, Denise? Her name was Mandala, now spiritual name, Denise? And turns out they were good friends in college, in high school, and maybe college, but for sure high school. And Divine Mother had brought this person here. They hadn't seen each other for decades. they had a reunion. The lady, wants to come to Ananda and various things, maybe learn to meditate. But because my friend here she could have closed the door. She could have just locked the door and said nobody's there. But she kept herself open, and look what happened. And so spiritually, the right asana is to keep the space open so that God can come to us, His messages can come to us, people can come to us, what we need can come to us, and then we'll be able to feel completely enveloped in His love and light. So I want to close with just this brief passage from Swamiji's book, Yoga Postures for Self-Awareness. He says here, this is one of the old copies, certain bodily postures are naturally associated with certain mental attitudes. When the mind is discouraged, the body tends to stoop forward. Courage tends to make the body erect. Under the influence of aggressive feelings, the shoulders often become hunched upward, the fists become clenched. When feeling stubborn, a person may jut his jaw forward. When he is inspired, his eyes will look upward. When depressed, they will look downward. Poise or lack of it is reflected in the way one sits, in the way he stands, in the movement of his hands.